Don't ever underestimate the power of storytelling. It is one of the most important skills that you can have. And don't think it's just down to novelists like me. It's all about telling the right story. And if you're running a business or just yourself, make sure your brand is consistent and is the message you want your customers, your clients, your bosses to see and feel and know about you. How you look, how you speak, how you present yourself. Make sure it's consistent, because if it's consistent and you know where you're going, you will have success, 100%.
Welcome to yourbrilliance.com. I'm your host, Amy Waterman. So I have a question for you. What do writing a novel and running a business have in common? Now, on the surface, it seems like nothing, right? Because writing is about being creative and business is about turning a profit. But it turns out they have one very important thing in common: storytelling. Yes, a novel is clearly a story, but so is a company. The story that a business tells about its mission and its products can either win over employees and customers or leave them indifferent. And you and I are stories too. We tell stories about ourselves all the time. Are those stories conveying the right message, and are they powerful enough? Those are questions that our guest for today is expertly positioned to answer. Owen Ryan is a storyteller extraordinaire. He's an author and a business coach. Building on 2 decades of experience in radio and entertainment, he crafts type-paced thrillers while also helping struggling businesses transform themselves into market leaders. Welcome, Owen.
Welcome, thank you. Lovely to be here.
So I want to know, how in the world do you find time to write books while also coaching businesses?
It's a challenge, that's for sure. It's a huge challenge. The time you need to write a novel is quite large, and the time it takes to run a business, particularly to set up a business, it takes a lot of time. But I love doing both, so I kind of find time. I make it that each one is a passion of mine, and each one is something I wouldn't want to live without. So I've been writing for about 12 years, and as you mentioned, I was working in the radio industry for a significant number of those in a very senior role, which required a lot of time in the office. But I just needed to write. I needed to get it out. So 5 a.m. starts are not unknown to me. And actually, my first book was written mainly in airport lounges and on trains. So I just used to find the time, and I get really grumpy if I don't write. So it's kind of like a cup of coffee for me in the morning. Start writing, I have a good day.
Yeah, so I love that, because if you have the passion, you will find the time.
Absolutely.
So I want to talk about your books in a bit, but first, you say that everything in life comes down to storytelling. Like everything?
Yes, but probably with one exception. Unless you are the Dalai Lama, who can live in the present, continuously, you are either reflecting on something that's happened, or a memory, or something you're worried about, or you're looking forward to what potentially might be coming. And looking back, looking forward, you are creating stories in your head. Those are, there are images that are being created every single second. I think the average person has like 50,000 thoughts a day, and those thoughts are all stories. And then when you convert them, you verbalize them, or you put them down on the page, they become a living, breathing thing that you share. But a story doesn't have to be something that you share. The story is going on in your mind constantly. You are creating stories right now, listening to me saying this. I am creating stories. Everything is about storytelling.
Okay, so a lot of people would say, wait, I'm not making up stories. This is all fact. So let's go then with a definition. So what exactly is a story?
For me, a story is about making a connection. It's about touching someone with, tapping into someone's emotions. It's about tapping into fear, loss, excitement, anticipation. It's that connection. It's something that I used to talk a lot about when I was in radio, the human connection. If you can connect with a listener, if you can connect with a reader, if you can connect with a client, to do that, if you do that, you're going to get a great result. You're going to get a much better result than if they're not connected to you. But to do that, you have to create that connection. So you have to tap into something in them that makes them think, oh yeah, that's me. That's me. I get that. That to me is storytelling. That is what a story is all about, is creating that human connection with another human being.
So that is really interesting because that's like we often think of story as something that isn't true, something that's made up, as opposed to here's the benefits of my product, here are the features, here's why you should buy it. That's just all fact, and I can convince you with reason that my product is the best product to buy. But this is something different. So could you actually give us some sort of illustration then? Like, let's say we've got product A,
Yeah.
and the business is right now selling it. Here's the features, here's the benefits. How would a business then somehow create some sort of story around that?
Probably the best thing is to give you real life examples. So if you look at brands like Coca-Cola, McDonald's, the story they tell is the improvement to your life, your relationships, how you look, how you feel based on enjoying their product. So for example, McDonald's, sharing a meal with your kids, with Coke, sharing a Coke with your friends in the sunshine, looking beautiful, the guy taking his top off. You're going to watch a guy drinking a Diet Coke. While you're drinking a Diet Coke, it's an exciting experience. It's going to improve your 11 o'clock, your Diet Coke break, whatever it was. And those brands are really, really clever because every single touch point that you get when you go, you go to the shops, if you see them on TV, you see them in movies, whenever you see their brands, their stories are consistent. It's all about the experience and the connection that you're going to have and the improvement your life is going to have by enjoying their products. And that is really, really, really clever. Conversely, you can then get companies who will share with you, we're number one, we're the best at this, we're going to do X, Y, Z. But then when you interact with them, your customer experience, your client experience is weak. You go to the website, it's out of date, the logo's old, the colors don't match, there's old content. The story they're telling is, we're not really number one and we're not really taking this seriously. We're trying, but we just haven't quite got our shit together. Whereas, successful brands, everywhere you look, their story is consistent and it's all about that connection.
So it's about, in a lot of ways, it's about creating a consistent emotional experience every time customers or anyone interacts with your business then. So how do we, I am sure that a lot of businesses know storytelling is important. How do we come up with a story that works for a business, and how do we know if it's working?
Someone asked me that the other day, how do you know when a story is working? And again, this is something I firmly believe in. It's in the DNA of everything I try and do. It's all about that connection, that human connection. So if you are, if you are talking to clients and you're just not getting the reaction or you're just not getting the response you want, then the chances are whatever you're sharing with them is not connecting with them. So ideally what you want to be doing, it all starts with your own brand, your own product, and knowing, what is our target, what is our market, where is the space for us, where do we sit in that, and how do we then convey that message? What do we stand for compared to everyone else doing this, and how do we convey that to the rest of the world, the rest of the market? Once you know what that is, then you break it down into, well, what does that look like on your website? What does that look like when someone answers the phone? What does that look like when someone's on hold? What does that look like when someone goes to the app? Do you even have an app? What does that look like when our people turn up in front of a client? The message has to be consistent all the way through. And you can probably tell quite quickly, if your business is not getting the responses you want, look at your story, look at your touch points, look at those connection moments. Are they consistent with your strategy right at the very center? With your headline, does everything that you do, your strands that come down it, do they match and do they deliver against it? And the chances are, if you're not winning in the market, they probably don't, unless you're a challenger brand and you're on your way up. If you're going backwards, chances are someone else's story is better than yours and it's more consistent than yours.
So you're an author and you write novels.
Yes.
Do you ever use those storytelling experience to actually create real stories in your business coaching?
Yes, absolutely. It's interesting. I was working with a client, and this was a one-to-one client as opposed to as an overall business strategy. This was some individual coaching with someone who was in a large organization, who was very good at their job, but came from a very traditional Indian background. Now, as a woman in an Indian background, she was kind of brought up to be almost seen and not heard. Her words, not mine. You know, it's a very kind of conservative culture, and this is how we expect you to behave. So when she went into the workplace, she was seeing people get promoted above her who were less capable. But the difference was, their story was, look how great I am. Look what I did today. Look what I achieved. Now, she was smashing it out of the park. And actually, she was doing more for the business than anybody else because she was trusted. But she was making no noise whatsoever about how good she was or the fact she wanted to climb. And so her reality, her story became her reality, which is basically, I'll just sit here and I'll do all the work. And those that are noisy, there's a great phrase that comes out of the northeast of England where I live, which is shy bairns get out. And it basically translates into shy children get nothing. So the quiet ones get nothing. And this was her challenge. So what I didn't want to do was, we wanted to change the narrative, but we didn't want it to suddenly change the personality. So she walks in one day and she's screaming, banging a drum, lights flashing, look how amazing I am. But gently, we gave her some strategies, or we worked on some strategies for her to find the route that would demonstrate just how good she actually was, just how valuable she actually was. And yeah, she might have gone and talked to a competitor about how good she was, and she could convey that back. All of a sudden, they're going, hang on, she's really, really important. And through changing that story, changing that narrative, the business saw her in a totally different light, and she started to get the recognition and the promotion that she was really keen on. So it's a very practical thing, but people don't see themselves as stories, but what you emit is your story to the world.
So this is personal branding, isn't it? This is where we have this, some people have that exercise where you pick 3 adjectives that you want to convey, and then suddenly you redesign everything, your resume, your website, all around those 3 adjectives. Are there any ways that you would suggest, like somebody watching this right now could look at their own personal story and make some tweaks to make it better?
So for me, the first thing to start with is understand your values. And there's a quick template on my website, owenryan.org, where you can just go through, select what really matters to you. And at the top, at the end of that, you'll either get 5 or 3. 3 is almost impossible because there's always some that you find you can't separate. But from that, you'll understand what really matters to you and your values, and and what you stand for. And then look at the job you're doing and how those values interact, with the business, but also how you're projecting yourself. And if they're incompatible, then there's a very obvious space there for you to change or for you to develop. If they are compatible, but you're still feeling that you're not getting the recognition that you deserve, then perhaps that's the time when you need to go that little bit further and maybe get some coaching or get someone to look into the details of how you work and how you operate, because a lot of it's very, very, subtle changes can make a huge difference. And also understanding the structure. One of the things that I do with a lot of my coachees and clients is that when you talk to them about the business itself and you understand, ask a lot of questions about how the business works, who does what behind you, who does X, Y, Z around you, you can then start to see quite quickly through experience where the dynamics are and where the sort of like the stress points and the weaknesses are. And you can almost, then guide them through, well, actually, there seems to be a space there, or that person seems to be quite strong-willed, and you're in that position because they don't want to let go of their position. So you've got to work around that. You don't want to go up against them. You've got to find a way to work around it and get your own strategy. So there are simple ways to do it, but there's a lot of nuances that can really help someone develop and grow.
So what if somebody is listening to this and they're saying, I'm just not a storyteller. Like, that's why we hire, creative people and marketers so that they can do all that. I'm just the facts, just straight up person. Is there any strategies you would give that kind of person to help create that emotional connection of storytelling?
Yeah, and this is great for stats people because if you're writing a paper, for example, if you want to put something in, you want to make a change in the business, or you have a strategy that you want to implement, or there's something that you feel strongly about, the best way to do it is to start at the end. What is the end goal that your change, your implementation is going to create? Now, obviously, it's going to be something positive, otherwise the business don't want to do it. So you start with, this is the end result. But then you go back to, well, where are we now? And you paint the picture, and you can do this with stats. So this is where we sit in the market now. This is our position now. This is the next bit. This is our competitive set. This is what they look like. The next bit, this is what our business looks like compared to them. This is an opportunity. If we do X, Y, Z, we will achieve this. What you're doing there is tapping into the fear of the market, the fear of them improving. And you also, what you really want to tap into, if we don't deliver or make this change, then the chances are that we will end up down here and our competitor who is getting their act together will end up over there. And you can, statisticians will be able to pull all of that information together and show the trends and be able to paint a picture which scares the living daylights out of a board into making that kind of change, but also excites them into what they can do. But I think if you just try and go, this is exciting, they'll go, yeah, it'd be nice to do that, but do you know what? We don't really want to invest right now. If you can prove to them by investing X amount of dollars or pounds now, you will save yourself an enormous amount of dollars and pounds later on when we're not number 2 anymore, we're number 6. And we've got to pay all this money to get back to number 2. So it's really start at the end. What's your end goal? What do you want to achieve? What do you want the person in the room or the person reading it to feel? And then go back to the beginning and work through those steps. Guaranteed, it'll knock them dead.
Yes, and what I love about that is fear and pain are such powerful motivators and such powerful story drivers. And I know that your genre is thrillers. You've got detective novels. Tell us, you've just come out with your latest book, Deadly Silence. Tell us about your role as an author.
Yeah, well, it's, as I say, it's a bit of a passion of mine, and it's an itch I have to scratch. And I was lucky enough to get published, and I'm onto my second release. The third one is out next month, and I'm working on the fourth one, which should hopefully be out in the summer. So Deadly Silence is the story of Detective Jane Phillips and her team, Detective Jones and Bovolino. And in the last book, Detective Phillips got herself into a bit of bother because she has this lust for justice. She's a purist. She's not bothered about climbing. She's not bothered about politics. She just wants to get justice. In doing that, she took some risks. She steps outside the law, and she gets herself severely injured in an incident. That causes PTSD. It also causes her to be demoted. So things are pretty tough for her. She then walks into the office and she's got a new boss who's someone she has a past together. It's an intriguing past and it comes out in the book, but he hates her with a passion. So it really taps into the emotion of someone who has, when you're reading it, when you've worked for someone you think is an absolute a-hole, but they have deciding power over your day and how you behave. And because of the hierarchy, you have to behave in a certain way. It gets even more intense because her boss is a climber. He's a political animal, and all he wants to do is use the case or the cases that they're working on to get himself higher and higher and higher. And she's confronted by a ritualistic killer who is terrorizing a quiet suburb of Manchester called Cheadle. And they keep finding these middle-aged women tied to various bits of furniture, see-through plastic bags over their head, suffocated with black X's on their eyes. And they've no idea. There's not a single trace. There's no sign of forced entry, but they're trying to piece together what's happening. And as she goes, she's hiding this PTSD, this post-traumatic stress disorder. And so she's dealing with all this, all the pressures that surround it. And I really, I talk about emotions. What I hope comes out through the book is this real sense of there's camaraderie within the team, but there's tension, there's fear, there's anxiety, there's stress. It's not just something, there's stress within the fact there's a killer on the loose, but it's also it's deeper than that because it's actually the stress of working in a stressful environment. I know all about that, having done that for 20 years, and I try to tap into that and really feed that through. So I hope it's more than just a thriller. It's actually something where you can really relate to the main protagonist and the stresses of life, and hopefully you reflect on some of that or relate to someone like yourself.
So that is fantastic storytelling. And for those of you out there watching, you want to get a copy of the book, you want to just check out Owen's work and see if maybe his coaching might be right for you, we have a link for you. Just go to yourbrilliance.org/Owen. That's yourbrilliance.org/Owen. Thank you, Owen, for coming on to the show. And I wondered if you had any last message you would like to leave our viewers with.
I think for me I've been thinking about this, don't ever underestimate the power of storytelling. It is one of the most important skills that you can have. And don't think it's just down to novelists like me. It's all about telling the right story. And if you're running a business or just yourself, make sure your brand is consistent and is the message you want your customers, your clients, your your bosses to see and feel and know about you, how you look, how you speak, how you present yourself. Make sure it's consistent, because if it's consistent and you know where you're going, you will have success, 100%.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Owen. And thank you out there for watching. We hope to see you again soon. Until then, let your brilliance shine.